So my name is Marijke Geurts, and I'm also joined by Paul Carter, who is part of our New Language Solutions team. He's multitasking as usual, doing the live helpline, but also helping me with the moderation of this webinar, and I really appreciate that. So I appreciate that you are all taking time from your busy weeks to join me for this webinar. And before I begin, I would like to mention that my presentation today is not based on extensive research. I'm not a researcher, either qualitative or quantitative. But in 2005, I did arrive in Canada as a newcomer myself. I've had a wide variety of jobs since then to build a Canadian resume, and I even went back to school to gain Canadian credentials. In 2011, I started working as a LINC instructor, and I also took on the role of employment language trainer until the spring of this year. So I've used EduLink and later Avenue since 2013, and became an online content developer for New Language Solutions along the way. So although I draw mostly from my own experiences, I hope you will find value in my ideas. The session will be recorded, and the slides will be added as a PDF file to the Avenue teacher forum as well. And I also have another handout which outlines a sample employment curriculum, which will also be added as a PDF to the teacher only forum. So today, we will look at the LINC themes through an employment lens. I'm going to share with you a possible 8-week employment training curriculum and which resources on Avenue are available to support a program like that. And I'm also going to show a few things of how you can use PBLA resources and how employment language training and employment training can also support PBLA. So first of all, I have 2 questions for you. I've told you a little bit about myself, so I would also like to know a little bit more about you. So there's 2 questions in the poll. The first one is, what is your role? Are you a LINC instructor, an employment trainer, or do you have an administrative role? And then the next question might be difficult, but I'm going to ask you to pick your favorite LINC topic. What do you enjoy teaching most? So the first question is, what is your role? And you just pick whether you're a LINC instructor, an employment trainer, or employment language trainer, whether you have an administrative role or other. And then the second question, if you scroll down a little bit, the question is, what LINC theme do you enjoy teaching most? And you can only choose one there. So far, for question number 1, most of you are LINC instructors. There's a couple of employment trainers or employment language trainer, and one person has said that they have another role. If you want, you can post in the chat what your role is. And Paul, if you want to share the results so everybody can see. And the LINC themes that you guys enjoy teaching most, Canada and Canadian culture. Yeah, that's one of my favorites too. And then important ones are also banking, Canadian law, commercial services and business, and health and safety, obviously. Okay, that's interesting. Cool. Thank you for answering that question. That was just the first little introduction. I actually do have 2 more questions for you, so please humor me. You don't have to answer, but just think about it. When you were in high school, what did your young mind think? I can't wait for my next class, or I can't wait to get out of here. And what did you think as a young adult, maybe when you were still living at home? Did you think, I wish my parents would give me more allowance? Or was it, I wish I had a job that made more money. And if I think back, my own little memory lane, I think for most of us, we wanted to be independent. We didn't want to wait for anybody to tell us, now you're ready to try it on your own. And what do you think our adult learners want? Well, I believe that the same can be said for many of our adult ESL learners. Even though in general, our students have excellent intrinsic motivation, they like being in class, they like learning English, they don't give the teacher a hard time. And if you ask them what they really want, it is to have a job. And it really doesn't make any difference if that's a student in the literacy stream or LINC 3 or LINC 7, at least in my experience. The difference with teenagers is that our students generally know that they will need to improve their English language skills and their knowledge of Canadian culture before they can be successful in finding and keeping a job or opening their own business. So as I mentioned in the description of this webinar, which you probably already saw, the top 3 needs of newcomers to Canada are getting information and services, learning the language, but number 1 is finding a job. And for a LINC instructor, it may seem that your students expect you to have all of the answers to their questions about these topics. And while LINC teachers and employment trainers, for that matter, are amazing people, we are not superheroes. But there is a way that we can be a little bit more efficient and give our students a little more of what they need, and that is by changing our perspective. So instead of thinking about the LINC themes from a life skills or cultural point of view, let's look at them through an employment lens. What employment skills could you teach for each topic? So those LINC topics that we just picked our favorite from. If you're following PBLA guidelines in your program, you'll be working with the real world task goals, and you're teaching language in the context of a real life situation. But besides the life skills and the information that newcomers need, you can also incorporate information about the different kinds of jobs in the sector that match the LINC theme. You can introduce skills that are useful in a variety of sectors, such as customer service, telephone skills, writing business letters, learning vocabulary. Quite often, what we think of as life skills can easily be turned into employment skills. They are just 2 sides of the same coin. So just think of customer service. What do you expect when you walk into a store? And I would invite you to leave your comments in the chat. Paul says to be greeted fairly quickly. And Valerie says that the staff is knowledgeable. So what are some other things that when you walk into a store, what do you expect from good customer service? Someone who's available to answer questions. Someone's available when you need them. Yeah, if you're asking for help, that there's somebody there. So, oh, I love this one. Staff who are helpful, but do not hover all the time. I know, I was at the bookstore the other day. I won't mention the name. And they just kept coming and, can you find anything? Do you need any help? I'm like, I'm just browsing. So other answers, that I've heard in the past is you want to feel welcome. You want to feel noticed, but not helicoptered. You want to have a good deal. Maybe you want to have good quality products. You want somebody to help you find things that maybe you can't find if you're really looking for something. You want to be able to try things. Now with COVID, some of that is harder, but in that case, maybe you want to have a good exchange policy, right? You're looking for several options. And most of all, for me, I don't want to repeat my questions over and over again because they keep putting me to somebody else in the line of management. And most of all, also, you want to be treated with respect as a customer. So if you ask your students this question, what do you want from good customer service? Almost everybody will have a story to share about a good or a bad customer service experience. And so from that, it is really easy to turn a life skill, such as shopping, into an employment skill. So if this is what you want as a customer, then how can you provide that as an employee if you were working in that store? So what vocabulary do you need? And the cartoon here is, it's a little bit fuzzy. The guy says, I said, well done. And the waiter says, well, thank you. So he's completely misunderstanding that comment. So what vocabulary do you need? What would be a polite way of asking a question? And what is appropriate body language when you're dealing with strangers, for example? So to try to change your perspective some more, don't think about the theme from a life skills or cultural point of view, but look at them through an employment lens. And what skills could you teach for each topic? So I've prepared an idea board, so you can follow the link, and it will also be in the chat. And on that board, it's an online bulletin board. You can share a few of your ideas for the different LINC topics. You don't have to limit yourself to your favorite topic. You can put it for any of the topics that are there. And the link to this idea board will stay active after the webinar so that you can always go back and collect some ideas that others have left there. So if you guys make your way over there, I'm going to find it and share my screen so we'll be able to see all those tips coming in. So this is the idea board. And if you want to add a suggestion, for example, for customer service, you just click on the plus and you can type to read it. And that's it. That's all you have to do. If somebody else also agrees with that, then you can give it a thumbs up. You can give it a like. So there's one for Canadian law, workplace health and safety, absolutely, policies and procedures. For education, skill upgrading programs, super important for employment. Soft skills for commercial services. And if we're looking at Canada and Canadian culture, our favorite topic, formal and neutral language at work. Yeah, how do Canadians interact with each other? That's an important part of our culture, but super important when you're at work. So there's a couple more coming in. And if we scroll down, there's also family and relationships, travel and transportation. So you can add ideas for any of those topics if you have any ideas. Thinking about that topic that you regularly teach in LINC, how can you incorporate some kind of employment skills in there? And for family and relationships, somebody said assertiveness training. I think that's a really valuable one. How can you say, no in a polite way? Yeah, health and safety, there's WorkSafe and also WMIS for workplace laws. For travel and transportation, can you think of any activities there? Maybe working as a taxi driver, reading a map or using, what's that called? I forget the word. Oh, somebody said invoicing there. Yeah, absolutely. If you've ever booked a trip, you've gotten that invoice. So the other side of that is creating an invoice. This is amazing. It's so much fun to see them all coming in. Excellent. Well, as I said, I'm going to leave this link open and you're welcome to come back to this and add some more ideas of how you can incorporate employment skills in your LINC topics. So I should go back to my slides. There we go. Okay. So what resources are there to support employment in LINC? There's a lot. The can-do statements for employment start at CLB 4, and they look like that. And they give you good examples of what you can expect from your learners in a workplace situation. The CLB's 2012 also gives some good workplace-related examples if you look at the boxes on the side. And Paul is dropping links to these files in the chat so you can get them there. The comparative framework of the CLBs and essential skills is also very helpful in understanding what type of skills Canadian employers expect from their employees. What should somebody be able to do in order to be successful at a job? And you can see here, I hope, that for the level 2 of the essential skills, it's actually quite high if you compare that with the CLBs. It's for speaking, for oral communication, it's a 6 to 8. For reading, it's a 6. For writing, it's a 6-7. And document use, which is reading and writing forms and things like that, it's a 5-6. So it's pretty high, the essential skills. But there's a site where you can find CLB aligned lesson plans that integrate essential skills into ESL. And I've used them, they're really well done. And they're also available at lower levels. So then you would be looking at, you know, the level 1 of the essential skills and how that compares. It's a 5-6, here's a 3 to 5, 4-5. So there's good variety there. I know that there's lots more resources available on Tutela, on the Real World Task Bank, places like Bow Valley College and Northwest College. They make excellent resources that you can use in your LINC classes. And I would invite you again to share your suggestions if you know something that's been really helpful for you, to share that in the chat or on the idea board. If you want to post the links there, you can do that too. However, because I promised that this would be a webinar about using Avenue in employment training, that's where I'm going to go next. So as I said, besides having worked as a LINC instructor, I've also been an employment trainer and employment language trainer at YMCA Newcomer Connections in St. John. And the employment training program that is offered there is sector specific. That means it is a full-time program. And students have 2 classes, one for language, in which they learn the vocabulary and language skills that are needed to work in a certain sector, such as hospitality, construction, childcare, business. There's been so many different ones done. And the other class that they take is an employment class. So before I share with you a general employment curriculum, in the poll, please choose the 3 topics that you feel are most important for newcomers to learn about in an employment training program. I know that all of them are important, but please only select your top 3 in the poll. And I had to combine a couple of the topics because the poll only allows you 10 different answer choices. And if you need to think a little bit, I understand. There's topics like labor market information, skills identification, application forms and resumes, cover letters, volunteer work, Canadian workplace culture, workplace law, networking and relationship building, job interviews, and goal setting. So which of those 3 do you think really need to be part of an employment training curriculum? So now you can see that application forms and resumes scored high. And the other one here, job interviews, scored really high. Canadian workplace culture scored really high. So, you know, if it was up to you guys today, those 3 would be part of an employment training curriculum. That's really interesting to see. Thank you for answering that. Oh, one person still voted for labor market information. Hey. Good. So let's take a look at how you can put all of that together in a sample employment curriculum. So this is what a framework could look like for an 8-week program. Now, maybe your program is longer, maybe you want to stretch it out more. This is just an example based on my experience. The numbers on the left indicate the week of the program in which a topic is addressed, but the precise content is very different if you're teaching a CLB 4-5 or a CLB 7-8 program. And when I was an employment trainer, I would start with an overview of the job search process and all of the different aspects of it. I would also explain that that is a cyclical process. It's more like an upward spiral as you continue to improve yourself. The employment curriculum does reflect that process. So the topics are not taught in isolation, but they dovetail and they build on each other. And as you go through the program, the skills come back. The different bands of color that you can see, the shade becomes lighter. They indicate groups of topics that are taught as a cluster, but at the heart of a program are a student's skills. So early on, when I was teaching, we would start by identifying what learners are good at, what they enjoy doing, or what they have experience in. We look at the demands in the local labor market and help learners match their skills to jobs. And then participants use what they've learned to draft a resume. I found that that takes some time for all of that to sink in, for students really to understand why it is important to think about your skills and why it is important to look at the local labor market. So, you know, we give them time to have that settle. In the middle of the program, the time is dedicated to workplace culture, to rights and responsibilities, good communication, because I've regularly had students who didn't have any problem getting a job, but the issue was keeping it. So I think it's important to include things like workplace expectations and behaviors that might be misunderstood. Then in the last part of the training, as I said, it's cyclical. We go back to the skills. And if it is appropriate for their level, learners draft a full cover letter. If not, then they just write a short cover email, and if needed, based on a template. We spend a lot of time on job interview prep. As you can see here, it's 2 weeks. When I started, it was only 1 week, but we found that that wasn't enough because a large part of the job interview prep is practicing talking about your skills and sharing from your experience. During that time, students also update their resume to fit a specific job that they really want to apply for. And learners participate in mock interviews, which also takes a lot of time to apply their knowledge. And then in the last week, we look at what their next steps are going to be and how they would want to continue building on their skills. So that's where we have goal setting and building an employment plan. Okay, so in your own organization, you may already have an employment training program with a similar or a different curriculum, but maybe you're not using Avenue yet. And it is obvious that these topics are different from the LINC topics we looked at early on in the presentation. However, if you look a bit closer at the LINC activities binders, and especially at the new blended modules and the units that are being developed, then it becomes clear how you can utilize these resources for your own employment training programs. As I said, I will be sharing a PDF file with you after the presentation, so you have the full overview. I'm going to show you a few things on Avenue, but I will share that, just a screenshot of that file that I'm going to give to you guys.
If I could just interrupt for a moment, sort of a question in the moment is, how many hours of instructions were in the week when you were doing this program?
Okay, so it was a full-time program, but they had 2 classes. So the language class was 3 hours, and then the employment class was also 3 hours. And that really helped students to get ready for a job. Obviously, since COVID, things have changed. I don't know exactly how it's run right now. I do know that before I left, it was a blended program, which meant they had an hour and a half of Big Blue Button class for language. Then there was independent work on Avenue. There was an hour and a half for employment in Big Blue Button, and then also independent work on Avenue. So in total, you know, the expected commitment was still 6 hours a day.
Thank you very much.
Yep. So the file that I'm going to share with you guys is this. So these are the resources that I've browsed. And then what I've done is for each week, I've given the topics and then which materials I would suggest from the LINC activities binders or from the PBLA units. And in the last column, I've indicated what CLB level they are at. So this makes it a really long document, but the idea is that you pick and choose what is appropriate for your level and what is appropriate, what students need, what they're interested in. Now, going to Avenue. That's the idea board. But this is the dashboard that I wanted to get to. Paul, did the switch go okay? Can you see Avenue?
Yeah, looks great.
Awesome. Perfect. Excellent. Now I just need to get my notes. Okay, so the first thing that I want to show you on Avenue is the PBLA portfolio. And if you happen to have Avenue open, you can follow along with me. So if you're on your dashboard, like I am here, you're going to click on the Avenue logo. And then you have to log in again sometimes, or it leads you to your teacher homepage right here. So now you're going to click on the binder. And that is going to open the digital portfolio. And sometimes you got to give the teacher homepage a minute because there's a lot of information to load. So now we're in the digital portfolio. And first I'm going to go to the Canadian language benchmarks just to show you that you can choose between the 3 levels. Okay, but I'm going to use the CLB 5 to 8 just for this example here. So then I'm going to go to My Canada and choose CLB 5 to 8. And that is going to give me the index of that section of the language companion. Now, if I zoom in a little bit, then you can see that starting on page 18, there's some really great information for job seekers. Students on Avenue also have access to this binder. So you could assign a page to them, tell them where to find it, that they have to read. At the top here, you can type in the page number. And I've been here already, so I remembered page 19. If you click enter, it goes directly to that page. You can see job search in Canada. If you scroll down here, you see that there's a link So the links in this online binder are active and they will open in a new link, in a new page. The other thing that you could do is use the thumbnails, which are great for scrolling really quickly. You can hide the thumbnails by clicking that icon there, or you can bring them back. Then I'm going to go to the section where I live, which is, again, I have to choose CLB 5 to 8. So there's some more pages here that are very useful for employment job seekers for an employment training program. There's job search right there. That's on page 9, right? So if I go to that page, there's a link again. You also see that there's some blank spaces here. Now, what I've done in the past is I would ask my students to download that page. Or at the time, they didn't download it because they had their physical binder. But you could ask them to download it so that they can print it off and then fill in that information. They can follow the instructions on the handout and they can fill in the information there. Finally, I'm going to look at the section Helpful English. Again, go into CLB 5 to 8. Magnify that a little bit for you guys. And you can see there's lots of information here. Looking for a job, interaction at work, also workplace meetings, business writing. So lots of great resources that are at your fingertips and that volunteers that your students can work through. And in the employment curriculum, which I showed you the first page of, I've already matched relevant pages from this stage 2 PBLA binder to each topic. So you don't have to do all that research anymore, unless you don't like what I've done, then you'd have to do it again. All right, I'm going to go to my classroom. And just very quickly back to my PowerPoint presentation. So that was an example of the binder and some useful topics there. If you've used the LINC activities binders for stage 2, then you know that these are organized according to skill rather than LINC level or LINC topic. But that chapter 4 is dedicated to looking for work. And the equivalent activities are available in the Legacy LINC courseware on Avenue. But there are other relevant activities in the LINC courseware that you will find in other chapters. For example, in the LINC 5 chapter, Interaction with Others, Social Interaction, there are some great activities about creating your social network and small talk. And isn't an important part of job search connecting and networking with people? So that's a great activity to pull. On that same sample employment curriculum, I've also added suggestions for which activities from the Legacy courseware you can use. And Paul will drop links to volume 1 and volume 2 of the LINC activities binders in the chat. So that's the PDF. The PDF is also available if you have courseware at that LINC level. So a few words about how you can organize the courseware. If you're teaching a LINC class, you can choose any new topic or module each month and simply use that the way it is offered. But when I was teaching the employment program, I would create myself 8 new topics. And then I would go to the different LINC topics and find the activities that I wanted to do. I would duplicate them and add them to the week where they would best fit. And then I would release a new topic each week. Chances are, if you're teaching an employment training class, then you're working with a multi-level group. Personally, I've taught classes with students at CLB 4 to 8, so that was quite a wide range. So that means that it it's really important that you are able to differentiate work for your learners. I've also found that the focus in an employment training program is more on getting the information and the employment skills and less on filling the PBLA binder with artifacts. So although you could support it, there's less pressure to provide a lot of skill using and assessment tasks. So because of that, I could get away with sometimes offering activities to higher level learners that were a bit too easy, as long as they provided good practice and relevant information. You could also have students try an activity that's a little bit too high for them, for example, by doing the activity together in class or having students work in pairs like a high-low. Another example, in the LINC 4 courseware, there are some activities about doing volunteer work. And my students have always found them very useful, even if they were a little bit easy. For example, if you're working with LINC 5 or 6 courseware, you can choose to add an activity, go into the SCORM repository on Avenue, and then select the activities from other LINC levels that are there. So you could go in and get a LINC 4 activity and add it to your own course. That's also a great way to differentiate your course and offer level appropriate activities to all of your students. In the past 2 years, New Language Solutions and other organizations have been working hard to add PBLA content to the courseware. That's relevant, that's new, it's fresh, and many of those modules have an employment focus. So now I'm going to show you what a course could possibly look like. So here we are back on my Avenue page, and we got this. For now, I'm going to switch my role to student. There we go. Okay, so you see here on the side, you see all of the topics that the 8 weeks and the topics that were in that overview with the orange colored bands. Looking at week 1, you see that I've added different activities from the legacy courseware. Some of these activities were pulled from chapter 5 on academic reading. For example, this one, recognition of provincial credentials. But they're very relevant for job seekers. Sometimes you really find great activities in unexpected places. For example, in the LINC 4 courseware, in the topic on education, there is an activity about learning styles, which is actually a great fit when you're talking about skills and the type of things that you're good at doing. But you could also include that in the last week of the program when you're discussing future goals and how students are going to reach those. In week 2, there we go. I've used activities from the LINC 3 courseware, actually, the volunteer application, because it is a great skill building activity, even at the higher level, and it leads to lots of questions about what kinds of questions are legal to be asked on a form, what are the benefits of having volunteer experience, etc. So some of you have commented on the registration that the legacy courseware is getting old. And if we look at an example in week 3, this one about minimum wage rates, I'm not going to deny it. Yes, those activities are not current anymore. So it's really important that you need to include links to provincial websites that give the most accurate information. But I do want to point out that a lot of the vocabulary and practice tasks still give excellent information and can be really useful for learners. Here in week 4, you can see that I've pulled SCORMs from a variety of topics and LINC levels, and the content of the week is highly flexible. If I scroll down, you see that there's like so many different activities. The list is quite long. That doesn't mean that you do all of that in 1 week. It means that you can change the activities based on your learners' needs, their interests, their language level. So if you do a needs assessment at the beginning of your program, you can really modify the course and make it fit for what your learners are looking for. The activities in week 5 about business communication have been pulled mostly from chapter 2 on business writing. Oh, it says chapter 5 here. Sorry. And chapter 7 on telephone skills. And for this example course, I only added in a few because there's so many that you can add there. Again, based on the need of your student. So maybe you want to focus more on writing, add more writing activities. You want to practice more phone skills, then add more of those. In the topic for week 6 and 7 about job interviews, I've actually added a SCORM activity that I had found on Tutela. It is this one. Based on the length and the level of the video that is used in there, it's a 7-8 activity. But if you go to Tutela, you can find many other great activities. They actually have a special collection for employment. So that's a really great resource when you can pull activities from that and add them to your own course. So now I would like to demonstrate a quick way that you can move one activity from one to another topic. And I'll just change my rule for that. And I'll have to turn editing on. Okay. Now you can see that there's the list of topics that is visible is quite a lot longer from the student view to the teacher view. I'm going to go to employment link 4. Is somebody not muted? Okay, there was some scrambles there. Okay, so the employment link 4 topic. And I want to choose 2 activities here. The veterinary clinic interview, I'll check that. And I'll do this one, why not? So with my mass action block, these ones that have been selected, so with the selected, I want to move those to the section on job interviews. And now you will see that they have magically disappeared. But if I go to my section on job interviews, they have magically appeared. And so they will appear at the bottom of that week. And from there, I can move them either by dragging them or by double clicking and saying, this is where I want it to go. And then obviously you need to make it visible for your students. So that's a quick way that you can move activities around if you already have that courseware on your page. As I said, you can also add activities by adding an activity. And then you would go into SCORM package. I'm not going to name it here. I'll just say test for now. For the package file, I'm going to go here way at the bottom where it says SCORM repository. And you go to the link activities, and then I can choose from link 4. I can choose which topic, employment, be positive. That's the activity that I just moved, right? So you can also get activities from other LINC levels by going into the SCORM repository. Okay. All right. I need to cancel this. Okay. So far, I've only shown you activities from the legacy courseware. But as I've mentioned, there are newly developed PBLA units and modules. So let's take a look at how these fit into the employment curriculum. And if I look at my time, I see it's 3:54 now. So I only have 5 more minutes. But if it's okay with you, I'm going to go over a little bit because these new modules and new units are so important and so fantastic. Okay. The units that I want to show a few of, the units have been developed by Toronto Catholic District School Board, and you can recognize them by their blue label. They're a little bit shorter and offer several skill building activities and 1 or 2 skill using or assessment tasks, but they offer great variety and they're at the right level and they support PBLA. So you can, the fact that they're shorter makes them ideal to fit into a curriculum like this. And you can choose to do a whole unit or just a few activities to fit the level and the needs of your learners. The PBLA modules, I'll show you an example of that as well. Giving and receiving advice is one of them. So these are modules and they have been developed by the team at New Language Solutions, and you can recognize them by their gray labels. These are complete modules that address all 4 skills. So you see listening, giving advice is speaking, and we have reading and writing. And they offer skill building, skill using, and assessment tasks at 2 levels. So if you were to complete each module as it is, it would take you 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, but you could also often divide the activities over multiple weeks to fill in your employment curriculum. So I'm going to scroll through the course again and take a look at some of the units and modules. So fitting in with week 3, Canadian culture and workplace law. There's the unit on workplace culture and another unit on workplace laws and policies. Should you be working with students at CLB 4, then the units on work and pay or taxes in Canada offer some level appropriate activities about understanding your pay stub. And I'll show you in this one. This one has a teal label, but it's developed by Toronto Catholic District School Board. And this has a reading on income tax at CLB 5. So that's important if you're discussing workplace laws. The topic from week 4, we had that as working relationships and communication, can be covered by the 5-6 module, giving and receiving advice. Here, learners practice different situations in which it is appropriate to give advice to colleagues. And I've already shown you that there are listening, speaking, reading, and writing tasks. But the section on emails, the last one, the one on writing, you could also carry that over to the topic of week 5. It would fit really snugly with business communication. If your learners need more practice with following instructions, then there's a great unit on instructions and procedures at work, which is at a CLB 5+, as well as making requests, resolving conflicts, also at CLB 5+. And those are shorter units. In case you're teaching a higher level group, then the CLB 7.8 module, arranging a workplace event, this one, might be what you're looking for. In this module, actually 2 workplace situations are featured. So the first one is organizing a party at work, and the other one is organizing a staff safety training. So both are used in all 4 skills. You could choose to focus on only one of them, so that would lessen the time that you need to go through the module. Again, in this module as well, the writing tasks here at the end, writing an email to request funds, could be carried over into week 5 on business communication. And if you want to know more, this module was also featured in the webinar Adventures in Module Land. So if you want an in-depth look in that. As you can see on the sidebar here, there are many more units and modules that address Canadian workplace communication, such as participating in meetings, participating in online meetings, and participating in workplace meetings. Paul, if I'm correct, this one, participating in workplace meetings, was also the topic of a webinar?
Yes, I think it was. I'll see if I can grab the link right now.
Yeah,
I
that'd be
think
great.
I actually gave that one.
You did that. You should know. Yeah, so, there's variety of units and modules at different levels that fit in with those employment topics. You may have noticed that there are fewer activities from the legacy courseware in the last 3 weeks of this sample course. So for job interviews and for goal setting, in the legacy courseware, there really wasn't that much, and I've gone through everything. But luckily, these topics are now covered by 2 new modules at CLB 7.8. And the reason, and we'll take a look at them, but the reason that they are offered at that CLB 7.8 level lies in the CLBs. Writing a full cover letter or participating in a 20-minute job interview, having a performance review meeting are tasks that are not expected from students in a LINC 5 or LINC 6 class. That doesn't mean that they don't need to practice these and get prepared for them, because if they're going to go out to work, they will find themselves in those situations. However, it does mean that you don't assess them on those tasks, right? So you might practice it, but from a PBLA point of view, you don't have to assess that. However, at a CLB 7.8 level, you can assess them, and that's where these modules come in. So I'll do a quick run through. So the module on job interviews, I feel could be divided between weeks 2, 6, and 7, as there are activities to support resume writing and creating online job search profiles. So there's vocabulary activities, commonly used words in resumes. Then there's activities, how to write an effective LinkedIn summary and optimizing your LinkedIn summary. That's the reading. Telling a star story is actually an activity that supports listening, writing, and speaking. So that one is central to this unit. And for writing, here we have completing an online job application as a skill building activity and writing a narrative text that you can also use on your online application forms, as well as in preparing for your job interview. So you could use some of those activities in week 2 and then continue with the module in week 6 and 7. Students get lots of information in the reading tasks and in the listening tasks about different types of interviews, different types of questions, how to prepare for a job interview, like do's and don'ts, how to answer certain types of questions. And then in the end, of course, they're going to practice answering these questions using their own experiences and writing stories in which they demonstrate their skills and experiences. Obviously they do a mock interview at the end as well. For the last week of the program, which is goal setting, you could use the asking for and receiving feedback in an APR, an annual performance review, which is also at CLB 7.8. Several of the skill building activities could be incorporated in week 4, which has the topic of working relationships. If you were to do all of the activities as they are, the module will stretch across 3 weeks. In this particular module, there's 3 examples of workplaces that are used. The first one is an IT area, which it's GitLab. Then we look at an example in a sales position, which is called Eat Well. And here's Eat Well, and also a personal support worker. So depending on, if you're doing a sector specific training program, you could also pick out some of those activities that are most interesting for your students there. For their own APR, for the speaking task, students actually use the classroom experience as if it is their workplace. And then they can refer to situations that you as an instructor, are also aware of, so that you don't have to invest a lot of time in learning about maybe their employment history or a certain sector that you're not very familiar with. So we've kept that quite general, just focus on the classroom as if it was a workplace. And so there you have it. These are all of the resources on Avenue that you can use to build your own employment curriculum. And to finish it off, I know it is not ideal when you have to piece together a curriculum, but I hope that I've shown that Avenue can certainly offer some resources to build a robust employment training curriculum that you can modify to suit your students' needs. We are aware that there are still some gaps to be filled, and this is what we will be focusing on for future modules, so stay tuned. We love receiving your feedback, and if you have used one of our modules, it would make us very happy if you could tell us what you think by completing our survey. So that link is at the end of each of our modules. And if there's still time, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. You can also contact Learn IT to Teach for more information about Avenue. And if you would like to take a closer look at the sample course that I just showed you, you can find it by following the link here at the bottom. Self-enrollment to this course is enabled with the password employment with the capital E. You do need an Avenue account to gain access, and you will be enrolled as a student. So all you can do is look at the resources, but hopefully with all the handouts and all the links, you'll be able to build your own employment training program. Thank you very much. Well, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I did talk to Jim, our training guru, and this course is not going to be available for you to request. The examples are there. You're going to be getting all of those resources on that handout, so you can build your own employment training program. I love feedback. If you have other ideas, if your training program for employment looks different, please let me know, because I'm always willing to learn more and get different ideas. Thanks everybody, and have a great afternoon. And thank you, Paul.